I knew the axe was coming the second Helland on my cubicle wall like he on a doxygen. New VP slick suit too white for Somion who's never missed a bonus. Sweetheart, he says because of course he does. Your little handshake diploma scything. Cute. But we're moving into a more scalable model. Translation. Fired, but I'll do it with a grin so you think it's a compliment. 10 minutes later, I'm in a glass fishbowl with HR, staring at a severance information packet they slid over like it was a birthday card. My badge is deactivated before I've even finished signing the exit form. They hand me a branded tote bag, logo. Front and center, as if corporate swag will patch over the fact that they just got in 37 enterprise accounts with one lazy pen stroke. As I walked past my desk for the last time, I let my fingers brush the spine of my Daguerreotypes binder. That binder's been with me through 2 recessions, a pandemic, and more red-eye flights than me optometrist wants to know about. Inside are 15 years of proprietary relations maps, renewal scripts, and the kind of client trust you can't log in Salesforce. The same binder he just called replaceable. 3 of those accounts the whales have key person writers in their contracts. My name spelled out in black and white. No me, no contract. VP didn't even blink, somewhere in his buzzword blender brain. Thinks I touch points can replace a 6 a.m. coffee with a client whose kid science fair project you sponsored. On me monitor was a sticky note that had been there for years. Check section 12C. I wrote it during a late-night contract review after a different executive to cut me out of a deal I'd closed. That clause is my quiet insurance policy when I fought. Tooth and nail for in a conference room, no one remembers now. I smiled when I saw it because I already knew this was going to be interesting. Oh, and before I keep going, apparently 97% of you are listening to stories like this without hitting that subscribe button. Come on, it's free and it lets my team keep serving up these corporate train wrecks with extra butter. They think silence means surrender, but silence means I'm counting. Counting the days until annual dates hit. Counting how long until the first termination. No derivatives. Counting every mistake they make now that they've handed my accounts to someone whose idea of relationship mentant is a webinar with bad lighting. I didn't beg, didn't argue, didn't even look back at the VP. He's kind of man who thinks winning is sharing himself talk louder than you. My win will be quieter, paper cuts, measured, and timed until he's standing in a boardroom wondering why the air feels so thin. So I walked out, heels clicking on tile, tote bag swinging at me side. The security guard gave me Fatholf sympathetic nod reserved for people who just lost their job but didn't deserve to. In my head, I was already laying out the next steps. Dust. Off the Lighthouse license agreements. Pull fellas 3 years of revenue numbers for those whales. Make sure every confidential file is backed up where it belongs on my side of the fence. Because here's the thing about buying replaceable, sweetheart. The people who say it never bothered to read the fine print. And Section 12C, that's not fine print. That's a loaded gun with a hair trigger. And they just handed it to me. By the time my tote bag hit the passenger seat of my car, I knew exactly how they'd handled transitioning my accounts. Sure enough, 2 days later, word got back to me from an old friend still on the inside. The VP had rolled out his grand retention plan, a single webinar, and a string of mass emails written like bad press releases. No personal check-ins, no remembering that client's kid's name, no handwritten thank you notes after contract renewals, just glossy PDFs and the hollow confidence of someone who thinks engagement is measured in click-through rates. Client #1 was the first to blink. By blink, I mean send a beautifully polite nuclear-grade email to the contract's inbox. Per Section 14.2, due to the key person change, we're exercising our right to terminate for convenience effective immediately, the kind of line that when you've been in the game long enough, you can hard being read in a lawyer's voice. It was a goodbye and more a formal obituary for the VP's career longevity. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was technically more like the gallows humor off watching someone burn down the barn toss what a fly. That account alone was worth more in annual revenue than his entire department's combined salary. I'd spent 7 years building it brick by brick. Flew out for a last-minute dinner with their procurement officer's husband fellow. Sat through a 3-hour opera in acity I couldn't pronounce just to closet gap on a renewal. And now gone inth. Time it took them to click send. So I baked a pie peach bourbon, my grandmother's recipe. When it came out off the oven, I scrolled cost of doing business and whipped cream across the toe pan, took a photo. I almost mailed it to their office, but decided the joke was better left in my kitchen. The part that would make them choke if they knew. Key person writers weren't some freebie the company dreamed up. I negotiated everyone myself. Sometimes dredging legal into calls they hated. Sometimes waiting out procurement until they caved. They're rare in corporate tech contracts for a reason. Companies don't like being handcuffed to an actual human. But my whales insisted on them back as they knew what they were buying wasn't just a service. It was me. In the old days, I kept renewal dates. Scrolled in a wall calendar and my cubicle circled in thick red Sharpie. It was part talisman, part scoreboard. Fat calendars hanging in my home office now, and I can see exactly what's about to happen in big looping handwriting. Client #2 renewal. Notice due in 9 days. Client #315. I don't even need to call them. The clock's ticking for free. I could almost picture the VP in his corner office, spinning his ergonomic chair toward the window while explaining to the CEO that some churn is normal during leadership transitions. That's what amateurs call losing a customer you thought was a captive audience. Pros like me, we call it a slow bleed. And this was just the first drop. That night, I opened my old files and skimmed through the writers again. Clean, tight, airtight. I drafted them to survive. Not just bad leadership, but leadership too arrogant to know they were the problem. The whales didn't need to reach out. They knew the drill. My departure wasn't a hiccup. It was a tripwire. 3 days later, my personal phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, I heard a familiar voice, warm, measured, and loaded with subtext. Hey, just checking in. Are ya okay? The kind of question that wasn't about my health at all. They were fishing, but politely to see if I was available. I smiled into the receiver. The bleed had begun, and there's nothing management hates more than realizing Fuound isn't going to clot. It didn't take long for the silence to turn into something you could almost hear humming, like the air before a storm. 9 days after Client #1 walked, Client #2 sent their own formal goodbye. No motion, no fluff. Just pursuant to Section 11B, we are terminate injective immediately due to key person change. They didn't even bother to ask about the transition plan because they knew there wasn't one. That account had been my baby since the ink dried on their first contract. I'd gotten a CFO to renew during the 2009 downturn by sending him a care package of bourbon and the exact cigars he smoked at his wedding. Now, the entire deal vanished into the legal ether with the click of a mouse. Client #3 didn't wait for their renewal date. 4 days later, their termination notice landed in Lego's inbox with a timestamp so close to lunchtime. I could picture Theparalegal reading it over a turkey sandwich. That night, I opened my old files and skimmed through the writers again. Clean, tight, airtight. I drafted them to survive. Not just bad leadership, but leadership too arrogant to know. They were the problem. The whales didn't need to reach out. They knew the drill. My departure wasn't a hiccup. It was a tripwire. 3 days later, my personal phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, I heard a familiar voice, warm, measured, and loaded with subtext. Hey, Just checking in. Are ya okay? The kind of question that wasn't about my health at all. They were fishing, but politely to see if I was available. I smiled into the receiver. The bleed had begun. And there's nothing management hates more than realizing Fuan isn't going to clot. It didn't take long for the silence to turn into something. You could almost hear humming, like the air before a storm. 9 days after Client #1 walked, Client #2 sent their own formal goodbye. No motion, no fluff. Just pursuant to Section 11B, we are terminate injective immediately due to key person change. They didn't even bother to ask about the transition plan because they knew there wasn't one. That account had been my baby since the ink dried on their first contract. I'd gotten their CFO to renew during the 2009 downturn by sending him a care package of bourbon and the exact cigars he smoked at his wedding. Now, the entire deal vanished into the legal ether with a click of a mouse. Client #3 didn't wait for their renewal date. 4 days later, their termination notice landed in legal inbox with a timestamp so close to lunchtime. I could picture Theparalegal reading it over a turkey sandwich. Same reason cited, same signature block. Another 7-figure account gone, and all the VP had to show for it was a webinar replay nobody watched past slide 4. Inside it wash house. My friend in ops described it like watching a kitchen catch fire with Letty. Head chef insists the smell is fine. Leadership ordered a rapid response plan which was code for endless meetings where everyone argued about message instead of fixing the core problem that the clients weren't buying services, they were buying me. That's when the real comedy started. The CEO's assistant, who had never once spoken to me directly in all my years, there sent an email with the subject line, "Need your retention scripts ASAP. No hi, no hope you're well." Just an expectation that I'd drop of everything and hand over the very thing he'd fought to keep mine lighthouse. They had no clue those scripts weren't company property. Every year, without fail, I licensed them to the company for 12 months at a negotiated rate. That trade got tucked into an additional services clause in my contract, signed off by prior counsel, who actually knew how to read. The day they walked me out was the day that license expired. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled my own copies from storage, work logs, email chains, the signed Lighthouse licensee data going back a decade, each one marked employee-originated methodology, licensed, not assigned. My performance reviews backed it up, too. Her proprietary relationship framework has resulted in X% retention and Y upsell. They weren't even shy about calling it proprietary. They just assumed proprietary man-hours. I spread Thepper work across my dining table like a general laying out battle plans. This wasn't revenge yet. It was preservation. You don't swing until you've indexed every receipt, every signature, every time stamp. Then my phone lit up. Caller ID the company. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Per your contract. The CEO's voice barked before I could even say hello. You are required to return immediately. Kin and will suit a compel performance if necessary. His tone was gravel and caffeine. The kind of voice you hear in a man who's been awake for too many nights realizing he bet on Thuron horse. I let him talk. I let him think he was dictating terms. I didn't correct him. I didn't mention that Section 12C was sitting highlighted in me copy of the contract like a low-dead trap. Instead, I gave him something he hadn't expect. Fine, I said. Let's read the contract together. I could almost hear his jaw tighten on the other. And the silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was the faint awareness of a man stepping onto thin ice without realizing it's already cracking. The invitation came through as a calendar block titled Emergency Strategy Session Mandatory Attendance. I accepted without comment and replied with one line. Please confirm counsel will be present. No way was. I stepping into their boardroom without a witness whose job it was to read the same language I was about to hand them. That morning I dressed the way I do when I know I'm going to war, but intend to look like I'm going to brunch. Neutral silk blouse, navy blazer, no jewelry except me wedding band. I carried 2 things. A slim leather folio holding 3 pristine copies of my employment agreement and a separate folder marked in black Sharpie. Lighthouse license agreements complete. The folio was for show. The folder was the loaded weapon. When I walked into the boardroom, the temperature felt a few degrees too cold, the way HVAC always does in rooms where people make bad decisions they hope to blame on someone else. The CEO was already at the head of the table. Tastes lightly askew coffee and a paper cube instead of his usual stainless tumbler. Small details but telling. The VP was there too, leaning back in his chair with that smirk that says, "This is all just a formality and you're about to play your part." HR sat to the side, lips pressed together, shuffling papers he didn't need to shuffle. And sure now, every few seconds, the her director made that little throat-clearing sound I've learned to translate as, "We stepped in it and I know it, but I'm not going to say it out loud." The CEO opened the meeting with pure bluster, projecting his voice like wooer in a stadium instead of a glass-walled room. He threw around words like breach, obligation, and critical operational need. The VP occasionally did along as if his agreement gave weight to anything. When the CEO paused for breath, I laid my folio on the table, unzipped it slowly, and slid a copy of my employment agreement toward him. One toward the general counsel, one toward the HR director. "Let's read it together," I said evenly. I reached into me blazer pocket and produced 2 yellow sticky flags, placing one on section 12C and another on Exhibit D, the section titled Employee Originated Accounts. I didn't say what was in them. I didn't need to. The point was to make counsel Z's go exactly where I wanted them without distraction. The general counsel adjusted his glasses and started dreading. At first, his eyes moved quickly. The way people skim when they think they already know what they'll find, but then his pen, which had been tapping idly on the table, slowed and stopped. His lips began moving silent like he was reading the same line twice just to make sure he hadn't hallucinated it. He glanced at Exhibit D, then back to Section 12C, then up at me with an expression that was no longer neutral. The VP's smirk faltered just a hair, enough for me to catch it. HR had stopped shuffling papers entirely. "I'd like to make sure everyone here understands," I said, voice still calm, "that Section 12C was negotiated after prior leadership attempted to reassign my accounts without acknowledgement or credit. It outlines specific conditions for what happens when the company terminates me without cause and then attempts to compel my continued service. I tap the yellow flag on Exhibit D, and Exhibit D identifies which accounts are defined as employee originated. Those are the same accounts the company has been trying to retain for the last 12 weeks unsuccessfully. The CEO leaned back slightly as if physical distance from the paper would change the words printed on it. The general counsel kept treading slower, now as if every sentence weighed more than the last. And behind his glasses, I saw it. The storm-building moment when a lawyer realizes client who thought they were in control just walked into their own trap. I didn't rush him. Storms are more powerful when they have room to gather force. The general counsel finally set his pen down, flattening his palm over Section 12. See, like he was holding it in place to keep the words from running off the page. His voice was slower now, deliberate as he read aloud for the room upon termination without cause. 1. Non-compete and non-solicit dissolve with respect to employee originate accounts. 2. Any attempt to compel service triggers a mandatory buyout equal to 2.5 times the trailing 12-month revenue from those accounts. 3. Continued use of Lighthouse Materials postertenian without license constitutes willful infringement with fee shifting. He stopped, adjusted his glasses again, and read it silently one more time. I could see the shape of realization moving through him. First curiosity, then disbelief, then fat quiet, resigned understanding lawyers get when they know the other side isn't just holding a trump card. They're holding the whole deck. For me, the emotion wasn't gloating. It was vindication braided with something zadder. I hadn't written that clause back as I wanted a war. I'd written it because once years ago, another VP tried to strip my accounts and hand them to his golfing buddy. And the only thing that stopped him was me refusing to sign me renewal without a carve-out. I'd fought for those words like someone fights to keep their own name. All I'd ever wanted was credit, recognition for the fact that my accounts weren't just company assets. They were relationships grown, guarded, and bled for. I remember the night I got the email from old counsel. It's unusual, but it's enforceable. If they sign, you're bulletproof. I kept that email, printed it, filed it in a red folder, and tucked it behind my lighthouse agreements. That folder was sitting on the chair beside me right now, its corner just visible under my jacket sleeve. The VP, still trying to project control, let out a soft laugh, more exhale than sound, and muttered something about overly generous language that wouldn't hold up. Counsel didn't even look at him. Instead, heading to HR, his voice low enough to make the entire table lean in. Did you terminate her without cause? HR didn't answer right away. The director shifted in her seat, glanced at the CEO, and then down at the table. The silence was enough. It wasn't the defensive we'll check the record kind of pause. It wasted pause of someone who already knew the record would hang them. The CEO broke the moment by clearing his throat and flipping through the agreement as I fanned her. Page might change the one in front of him, but he wasn't fooling Gagnon, least of all me. The math was already forming in counsel's head. 3 whales trailing 12-month revenue and the high 7 figures multiplied by 2.5 plus. Statutory damages for willful EP infringement if they'd touched Lighthouse. Since my last paid license was the kind of number that makes board members whisper and shareholders ask, why no one saw this coming? I sat perfectly still letting the weight of it settle. In my head, I could hear a clock ticking, not the one on the wall. The other one. The moment they walked me out clock. The payout clock. The damages clock. The you dash just dash made dash a dash very dash expensive dash mistake clock. The VP glanced at me again, probably searching for a crack. A tremor. A plea. He found none. I wasn't there to beg for my job back. Wasn't there to trade insults. I was there to watch them reread their own signatures and finally understand what they'd agreed to. And now, they had the room froze. Not silence. Suspension. That uncomfortable pause where everyone's waiting for someone else to speak first, because whoever talks admits they're in trouble. Finally, General Counsel broke it. Pull the trailing 12-month revenue for the 3 employee-originated accounts listed in Exhibit D. A junior analyst in a Navy suit stood instantly. Laptop already open. He moved like someone handling a live grenade. 10 minutes later, he was back. Pale. Jaw tight. He leaned in and whispered the numbers to the CFO. The CFO didn't hide it. His shoulders collapsed. The total was announced like a confession. High 7 figures, multiplied by 2.5 per. Section 12C, the number didn't land. It crushed the room. You could practically hear them converting it into destroyed quarters. Bonuses evaporating. Careers quietly bleeding out. Then ops made it worse. We did use her Lighthouse scripts last week. The words came out hesitant, like a kid admitting they broke something and hoped no one noticed. Every head turned toward me. I reached into my folder and slid one page across the table. The Lighthouse license agreement. Expiration date highlighted. The exact day they walked me out. No. Renewal. No extension. Every use since then wasn't a mistake. It was willful infringement. Fee shifting mandatory. From my bag. I pulled the access logs. I had security. Alerts in place for post-termination access, I said calmly. Here's your login history. Timestamps. IP addresses. User IDs. My voice stayed low, steady, because I've learned something. When you speak softly in rooms full of people who think volume equals control, they lean in, and when they lean in, they listen. The CFO scanned the B.
Logs.
His pen started clicking. Fast. Counsel took the page, read it once, then set it face down like it might burn him. The CEO rubbed his temple. The VP hadn't spoken yet. The smirk was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of someone trying to remember how the rules work when the board flips against him. Let the silence stretch. Then I opened my leather folio and placed 2 envelopes on the table. Neat. Labeled. Option A. Option B. I slid them forward like a magician revealing the final trick. Option A, I said. You retain me as an independent consultant, $900 an hour, 200-hour minimum, paid in advance. The VP resigns, a public apology for role. Misclassification. Lighthouse license reinstated for 12 months at triple the previous rate. I tapped the second envelope. Option B, I decline. I join a competitor who already has my 3 whales under contract. Be out plus infringement damages wired by Friday. 5 P.M. My tone didn't change. My smile stayed polite. Thin. This wasn't anger anymore. It was arithmetic. Numbers with teeth. I rested my fingertips on the envelopes like a card shark hovering over a winning hand. You can open them now, I said evenly, or later. The clock runs either way. Option A was mercy, a narrow escape hatch dressed up as cooperation. Option B was clean. Brutal. Final. Slid the envelopes closer. Paper has weight. And weight speaks. The CFO glanced at option B, the thicker one, then looked away, like staring too. Long might make it real. The VP finally exploded. This is extortion. Too loud. The sound people make when they're trying to drown out their own pulse. Lighthouse is company property. You built it here. I didn't interrupt. I tilted my head. The way you look at a dog barking at its reflection. Then I turned to counsel. Counsel didn't even look at the VP. He flipped to Exhibit D and read aloud. Lighthouse Proprietary Methodology. Licensed annually by mutual agreement. Ownership remains with the employee-originated account holder. He closed the page. It's not yours. The words hit like a gavel. The VP tried again. Counsel cut him off. And continuing to use those materials without a current license, he stopped, adjusted his glasses, looked at me. You have access logs. I slid them over. Fingerprints at a crime scene. Counsel nodded once. Math. Recalculated. Damages triple. Still no anger in me. Just clarity. From my folder, I added 2 more documents. Old board minutes. Original origin memo. Anchors. Truth. That wouldn't drift. The VP went quiet. The CEO looked like a man searching for a window in a locked room. I wrote the invoice in silence. Circle the total. Friday. 5 P.M. Then I slid it across. This is the clause you thought would force me back, I said, tapping Section 12. What it actually does is trigger the mandatory be-out and dissolve every restriction you thought protected you. Counsel nodded. Slow. Final. The CEO exhaled. What would it take to make this go away? I stood. Tapped. Option B. No one reached for it. They didn't need to. The whales didn't choose your logo, I said. They chose me. Silence. The CEO saw the circled number and ended it. Close it. I left the invoice, left the silence, left them staring at a number no pep talk could erase. By the time the wire cleared, my badge wouldn't open the lobby turnstile, and my calendar? Already full. Thanks for watching. Subscribe because revenge is best served with receipts.